This section will explore how vital connectivity is to all of us and some of the lessons learned accelerating the rollout of 5G in the West Midlands. Working collaboratively has proven to be a key element to any success. Therefore, joining the panel discussion will be representatives from infrastructure providers for the mobile network operators and local authorities, sharing their experiences with West Midlands 5G infrastructure acceleration team. Let me first of all introduce the panel. We have Heather Clark, Strategic Projects and Funding Manager from City of Wolverhampton Council, Melinda Fawcett, General Counsel and Director of Property and Estates at Cornerstone, Paul Ward, Head of ICT and Digital for Coventry City Council, and finally, Rhys Enfield, Director of Infrastructure Acceleration at West Midlands 5G. In addition, at the end of our panel session, we will also share with you recordings from two other interviewees. They are Chris Jeffries, UK Acquisition Manager with BTEE, looking after their mobile sites portfolio, and Juliet Wallace, Business Planning and Property Director at MBNL. I think to get started, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, the pandemic, COVID-19, that's been around us for the past few months. We'd love to know the panel's thoughts on the technological advancements brought about or accelerated by the pandemic and the role of connectivity. Heather, may I start with you?
Although already a priority of Wolverhampton, COVID has definitely increased the importance of digital. It's a cross-cutting theme of our relighting the city strategy and also cuts across all our scrutiny panels.
And perhaps giving a view from industry, Belinda?
Yeah, Rick, I think the pandemic has clearly led to a lot more people relying on mobile connectivity and coverage. Some recent research undertaken by Speed Up Britain campaign showed that 60% of us rely on mobile internet for 1 hour or more a day, and 65% of us consider mobile connectivity important for their work. So mobile technology has rapidly evolved over the years, and with the recent pandemic, it's even more evident that the industry and government need to work together to put this high on their agenda. We need to ensure that the infrastructure required to support this new technology and this heightened demand, and indeed the changes in our ways of working, can be delivered quicker, easier and cheaper. So future-proofing is key here.
And Paul, perspective perhaps from Coventry, please.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So much like Wolverhampton, digital was already a key transformation priority for Coventry. What COVID has done is it's highlighted the significant role that technology can and does play in both professional and personal lives. We've seen a great increase in digital adoption through the greater use of technology, but one of the areas that it has highlighted is things like digital poverty. So we might have connectivity to a property, or there might be a really strong mobile signal in an area, but can the people that live in those areas afford to pay the subscription or tariff? In the main though, COVID has really highlighted the need for strong, reliable and affordable connectivity for all.
COVID's been very much part of our lives for the last few months. Do you feel that it has reshaped the priorities of the West Midlands? If yes, where do you see 5G and connectivity playing a role in this? Let's first of all go to our two local authority representatives, Heather and Paul, and then over to Rhys on how West Midlands 5G is supporting the region at this time. So Heather?
Digital has increased the importance, ranging from the importance of future-proof digital infrastructure to service delivery, digitalising businesses, improving digital skills, and also addressing the digital divide. 5G and connectivity can play a huge role going forward around new ways of service delivery, new ways of delivering business, and a changing economy with digital at its core.
Well, it'd be interesting to see if your experience concurs with Heather's.
Yeah, absolutely. So COVID's turned the world on its head. I don't need to say that really, but it has. And whilst we will return to some level of normality, it has highlighted that the old way of doing things might not be the best way anymore. So digital approaches will really be fundamental to how we rebuild the economy, and will certainly feature more prominently in people's professional and personal lives. Digital connectivity in all of its forms already is, but increasingly will be a sought after commodity. And we already see things like internet connection speeds featuring in people's choices around house purchases. 5G, due to its ubiquity, speed, reliability, will surely be a priority for everybody in the not too distant future.
Reese, what's your view from a West Midlands 5G perspective?
Okay, thanks, Rick. Yeah, so recovering after coronavirus will require disseminating vital information, connecting crucial services, leveraging big data, artificial intelligence, as well as adopting new ways of working. This all needs to be supported by ensuring great connectivity for all. I think only then can our communities, economies and countries actually start to recover.
Now, looking at the work done to date by everyone, and in particular the removal of barriers, Reese, what role has West Midlands 5G had in accelerating the rollout of 5G in the region?
Well, as West Midlands 5G, we're in a very privileged position of being able to not only support the local councils, but also work with both mobile operators and infrastructure providers to remove barriers in the two key areas of the electronic communications code and town and country planning, helping to overcome issues and turn what were often confrontational relationships into collaborative ones. We've also worked with industry to develop solutions for small cell deployment and created a connected map to allow operators easy access to public assets such as council land and buildings, for example.
And let's get a local authority perspective on this. Going to Heather first.
Local authorities lack the telecoms experience. Therefore, WM5G have supported us to increase our understanding of the code, the processes and procedures, and that has enabled us to build the internal capacity and develop internal processes and procedures, from calculating consideration and compensation to standardising leases, and that's enabled us to support the rollout of 5G locally.
And Paul, a perspective from Coventry.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So for me, the mapping of existing infrastructure has been a really crucial exercise that's been led by West Midlands 5G. It provides such a strong asset for the region in terms of what we've got where, from a mobile connectivity point of view and digital connectivity point of view, but importantly, it highlights what we haven't got and where we haven't got it. West Midlands 5G have also been crucial in hooking up conversations with the right people within the mobile network operators and their supply chains. As Heather has said, that's not always an easy space for local government organisations to get into, but West Midlands 5G have done a great job there.
On that note then, how has the intervention and assistance of West Midlands 5G enabled the building of better relationships across the different parties, and why is it important? Firstly, Heather, do you concur with Paul's comments?
Definitely. West Midlands 5G have introduced us to key partners and supported that development of relationships, including helping us to understand and overcome complex judgments arising from the tribunal.
Belinda, what would your view be from the perspective of an infrastructure provider?
Yeah, well, I mean, in order to meet the government's digital strategy and plans, it's absolutely crucial that all relevant parties and organisations are on the same page. I mean, only then can we expect a positive outcome to improving the UK's digital economy and building a better connected society, which ultimately is what we all want. So collaborating with West Midlands 5G, we have made significant progress with both local and combined authorities, helping us to deliver mobile services to specific areas. We've been using the code legislation to help deploy mobile infrastructure more quickly and efficiently, and engaging with the West Midlands 5G has helped gain positive results on projects. So as Paul said, a key driver to this is enabling the right conversations with the right people and to generate a real sense of collaboration.
And for your part, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, just to reinforce those comments, really. So partnerships really are everything to digital in its widest sense, but in particular, digital infrastructure. Building those relationships across these partners is really, really important. West Midlands 5G have done a great job of facilitating these partnerships and developing those relationships.
So how do the councils see the role of West Midlands 5G, and how has this relationship impacted on their digital agenda and their view of the wider social and economic benefits? Over to you, Heather.
West Midland 5G has allowed us to speed up certain aspects of our digital infrastructure strategy, and that's complemented aspects that are already underway. It's built internal capacity, especially around the understanding of telecoms and code.
And from a Coventry perspective, Paul?
Yeah, so West Midlands 5G are very complementary to our already ambitious digital plans in Coventry. We see West Midlands 5G as a key partner in this, and we work very closely with them on a number of our digital connectivity programmes. West Midlands 5G bridge many gaps very well between the mobile network operators, governments, local authorities, communities and citizens, especially with regards to some of the bad press that 5G attracts regarding health concerns. So in that space, West Midlands 5G have ensured that Public Health England are brought into local forums, and we are collectively developing messaging in that space.
Infrastructure providers, operators and councils have similar priorities in terms of technological rollout and an emphasis on ensuring the benefits for everyone. However, they both face quite different circumstances, which can cause pressure points. How have the issues been resolved? Perhaps in Wolverhampton, Heather?
Building relationships between the MNOs and councils have given us a much better understanding of each other's goal, and it's enabled us to introduce processes such as pre-application discussions with planning that support the rollout and make it run more smoothly.
And from an infrastructure provider perspective, Belinda?
So planning is key, and MNOs and councils are engaging at the moment to understand where the pain points are and how these can be resolved. More recently, the government has announced its proposed reforms to permitted development rights to support the deployment of 5G and extend mobile coverage. And we as an industry welcome this and look forward to further engagement with councils to assist in the rollout of mobile connectivity.
And Reece, what's the West Midlands 5G perspective on this?
Okay, so this is an area of planning where we've worked hard with both councils, MBNL, Cornerstone and the operators to ensure that the operator plans are shared in advance of applications and that the councils fully understand what the operators are trying to achieve and why. This way, the chance of an application being rejected is greatly reduced and the end-to-end process is then ultimately accelerated.
Paul, what would you add to this?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I mean, just to echo what others have said, really. So it's all about the conversation and alignment on agendas. So a common understanding of what the issues might be and how they are seen by all of the stakeholders, and then working to reach a jointly agreed way forward and understanding of timescales and managing of expectations of all parties, I think.
Councils are clearly large organisations with various interesting parties, from elected members to individual departments, such as planning, legal, property, the digital team. How have you navigated this complex landscape, Reece?
It's a very good point. The size and scale of councils varies dramatically. So we've put some fundamental building blocks in place to help us and the operators work in the most effective way. One of the first tasks was to work with the councils to put digital champions and coordinators in place. These were people who knew the internal workings of their councils and could help get things done. Prior to this, time was often wasted just by chasing around trying to find the right contact within the council. The second thing we did was to form a 5G digital forum where all the champions and coordinators are represented. This forum is used to share knowledge and gain learnings, not just about accelerating 5G rollout, but also about the wider 5G programme and the benefits that that can bring.
Paul, as a digital champion, you're part of the digital forum. How do you see it working?
Yeah, absolutely. Coventry are a proud member of the 5G Digital Forum, and it complements our already established digital strategy and our newly formed citywide digital board activity. And we're running that activity under a project called Project Sherborne. So our strategy, Project Sherborne, it provides a single route to navigate digital within the organisation, which, as Reece has highlighted, has been complicated in the past.
If we change the subject a little, Belinda, what are your views on how effective or otherwise the changes to the Electronic Communications Code have been since it was introduced in December 2017?
So the code is not being implemented as intended. Progress is being stalled by lengthy legal proceedings, leading to significant delays to vital upgrades of existing telecom sites and new sites. I mean, shared intentions to build better mobile networks are clearly being frustrated and holding the UK back. I think, as we all know, there are many touch points when it comes to deploying mobile infrastructure, whether with councils or with private landowners. And it can be challenging and can be subject to numerous delays and objections from interested parties. But that's why the Electronic Communications Code legislation was revised in 2017, as the government recognised that operators and landowners needed to have a consistent and clear framework guidelines when it comes to agreeing these deals. However, although there has been progress with the code, there are still loopholes in the legislation which need further fine-tuning. The past 2 years, we've had tribunal cases, but some of those decisions have left all parties, both operators and landowners, unclear as to their position. Recognising this, a joint industry campaign known as Speed Up Britain was launched in July this year by Cornerstone, MBNL, Cellnex and Mobile UK to lobby the government to make changes to the code to help make deployment of mobile infrastructure quicker and easier. The campaign's calling on government to make targeted changes to the code, which we hope will make it easier for all parties involved.
Reece, how far would you agree with this?
Yeah, I would agree with it. I think it's clear the original legislation has not achieved what it originally intended to do back in 2017. I do think, though, that with the ongoing work between government, operators and local councils, it will begin to improve as public bodies start to understand the value that 5G will bring both socially and economically to their region. We've also already recognised that different parties do have to work together collaboratively, and this sometimes means making compromise from time to time. Ultimately, I think we all believe the code could do with some updating, and hopefully that this will happen in the not too distant future.
Moving to West Midlands 5G a bit more, it has a target by the end of its programme in 2022 to have accelerated 5G by 20% more 5G sites across the region than originally planned. How are you getting on with this target, Reece?
Well, as you know, Rick, the plans of mobile operators and neutral host providers are continually evolving, but we're now starting to get clear evidence that network densification is starting to happen through new infill sites being built and the start of some small cell networks. Our aim is to make the West Midlands the easiest region within which to deploy mobile network, and we believe that this is now the case with more 5G coverage than any other comparable region, and this has been evidenced recently by a report carried out by Umlaut.
I think you have all mentioned both the challenges and the exciting opportunities within the region, but there are many different priorities. How do you see 5G as the golden thread for some of these themes, Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I mean, so as previously mentioned, COVID has highlighted the importance of digital and digital connectivity. So fibre, public Wi-Fi, Internet of Things, sensors, but importantly 5G are all core components of that. A lot of the work around 5G focuses on business and personal impacts of 5G, but something that we are hoping to showcase very soon actually is the creative and visitor experience possibilities that 5G can bring as part of our upcoming City of Culture that's taking place in Coventry between May 2021 and May 2022.
I rather suspect from a West Midlands 5G perspective, you will see 5G as being this golden thread. Would you agree, Rhys?
Yeah, from my perspective, 5G is the stimulus for all the connectivity work. It's driving the debate and the realisation that we're moving into a more connected world where connectivity will be as critical as any other basic utility. Areas such as healthcare, transport, manufacturing, even gaming will evolve dramatically over the coming years, and it will all have the common thread of high speed, high capacity connectivity.
So what does the future hold? And what are the key lessons learned that you can share with the audience today? Starting with yourself, Belinda.
So 5G is exciting, and there's clearly public demand for it, as well as for enhanced and more ubiquitous coverage. But the opportunities that next generation mobile technology and in fact the increased coverage it offers had a huge impact on the UK. But however, I have to reinforce the fact that to roll out the infrastructure needed, it has to be a collective effort between the property, telecoms and the legal industry, together with all the landowners. I believe there is a risk of not reaching the full potential that mobile technology can offer in the UK if we don't align ourselves. And we may all have very different ideas on the best practices to deploy mobile infrastructure across the UK, but I think that the one common goal we share is the benefits arising from increased mobile coverage, connectivity, including the economic boost of circa 34 billion if the government actually delivers its target of delivering 5G to the majority of the population by 2027.
From West Midlands 5G, Rhys, what would your view on this be?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Belinda's saying there. The prospect of 5G connectivity is exciting, and that it will open up opportunities that are not yet even thought about. The key lesson that I've learned over the last 18 months is that all parties need to adopt a collaborative approach. In the past, the relationships have been at times very confrontational, and if we are to succeed and exploit the opportunities that 5G can bring, then we all need to work together for the benefit of UK PLC. But ultimately, that does mean that we will all have to sacrifice the odd sacred cow if we are to move forward in a new way of working together.
I think it's been an interesting discussion from all perspectives, and I'd like to thank you, all the panelists, for joining us today. But before we go, let me also share with you some more views.
Thank you, Rick. I've also discussed overcoming barriers to accelerate 5G rollout with two other colleagues who West Midlands 5G have worked closely with. These are Chris Jeffries, RAN UK Acquisitions Manager at BTEE, and Juliet Wallace, Business Planning and Property Director at MBNL. So firstly, I'm going to go to Juliet. Juliet, in what way have West Midlands 5G helped to accelerate your 5G rollout? And perhaps in future, is there anything else that we should be doing to help move to the next level?
Over the last 18 months or so, West Midlands 5G have provided us with expertise which has been trusted both by local authorities and the operators. And as such, they've been instrumental in brokering some arrangements because they've been able to recognise problems faced by both parties, and they've been creative and proactive in identifying opportunities and solutions. This has ensured the 5G rollout has been able to progress. With regard to what more they could do to move to the next level, I think it's imperative that council leaders recognise the value of connectivity and the bigger picture regarding ensuring cities, towns and villages all benefit from the best technology. West Midlands 5G could provide an advisory service across not just local authorities, but perhaps wider public and private institutions as well.
Helpful feedback. On another subject, changing the subject, but we've already heard the views from the panel on how effective the changes to the Electronic Communications Code have been since it was introduced back in December 2017. How difficult has it been getting code agreements in place from your perspective? And then are there any recommendations you'd like to put forward to improve the situation?
I think it's well known that progressing code agreements has been incredibly difficult since it was brought into force in December 2017. Whilst there are undoubtedly some errors made in the early days, the operators have been working diligently over the last 2.5 years to improve how we communicate with landowners. However, the continual searching for loopholes by landowner agents typically to avoid the code and its implications is very far-reaching. The Speed Up Britain campaign was launched in July this year and is seeking to work with all stakeholders so we can identify opportunities for improving how we collaboratively seek solutions to the current situation in order we can achieve momentum in putting code agreements in place.
Again, helpful and very aligned to the comments from our panel. Another area of our work, West Midlands 5G have developed a connected map to allow operators easy access to public assets and information. Now, how valuable do you think this tool could be in finding perhaps new macro cells or small site cells?
A great initiative. I mean, identifying new sites, however, is significantly more complicated than most people appreciate. This is predominantly because of the way in which the sites which make up the network need to interact with each other. However, having a great starting point is having a list of sites which are available and where telecoms operators are actively encouraged to be. Whilst public assets won't solve all the site location challenges, I'm sure that a connected map would be a great start in the initial search and undoubtedly provide the opportunity to save considerable time and resources in the early part of the process.
It's been really useful to capture your views as well. Appreciate your time and thank you for joining us today.
Very much.
And now a few questions to Chris Jeffries. Chris is the RAN UK Acquisition Manager for BTEE. Welcome, Chris. You are unable to join our panel, but really pleased that we can pose a few questions to you now, making sure that we get an operator's view. So first of all, I'd welcome your views on what way have West Midlands 5G helped to accelerate your 5G rollout, and secondary, in future, is there anything else that we should be doing to help move to the next level?
Yes, thank you, Leslie. It's a great opportunity, and thanks so much for giving us just that to talk through our lessons learned with the collaborative approach we've been having with the West Midlands 5G group. Certainly since the initial sort of stages of our 4G and 5G rollout plans, we were very much struggling in the space of the ECC world, notably around getting consideration and compensational valuations accepted by not only the councils, but also by their appointed agents. And a lot of the time in that space, that sort of delayed a lot of the delivery programs across all of the techs we were running out in that period, but also ways in which we could reach a consensual agreement, which was obviously the whole benefits of the ECC in the first place. Sadly, that wasn't always the case. And so with the collaborative approach with the West Midlands 5G group, what they gave us is a much more of a neutral platform, which I think is absolutely critical when we're discussing with councils and their agents, and specifically in the case of Wolverhampton, where we were struggling to even get sort of the initial heads of terms agreed in principle, and again, not even having a draft template agreement in place to work from, which obviously, as we all know, speeds up delivery. So having the sort of the more honest broker and the sort of collaborative approaches, what you guys did very well is to break down those barriers. So what you created is an environment by which it was very neutral. We could express our sort of requirements for the network rollout from an operator's perspective, but also from a landlord's perspective, they can understand the benefits that obviously 4G, 5G will bring to the areas, regeneration of the economies, especially with the COVID climate these days. That's very important. But more importantly, the skill set you provide from having been in our world, you're then actually educating your clients in a way that's not, dare I say it, the hostile environment that we were previously working under.
Interesting. You've mentioned the electronics communication code, and I think it's fair to say that since it was introduced, it has not been without controversy to some degree. The panel gave us their views. You know, Chris, how difficult has it been getting code agreements in place from your perspective? And are there any recommendations you would put forward to improve the situation?
Yes, I mean, certainly from a recommendation side of it, obviously we're having to go to the tribunal in the United Kingdom a lot more than we ever had done. or previously had planned to, because we were hoping that the ECC sort of methodologies that are being adopted were very clear and concise. Unfortunately, most of it is very grey. So with the Speed Up Britain, with the whole connected to 5G, what we are finding is we're having to spend a lot of time in trying to set the sort of case precedent to allow us then to challenge the ECC wording, to then allow us to speed up and accelerate what we've always been trying to do, which we thought the legislation would provide. But unfortunately, it has slowed, should we say, deployment somewhat since its introduction in 2017. So I think what we would probably look to do is, rather than trying to get to a case law in every single scenario where we feel the ECC wording is lacking, is actually to sort of work with the likes of the West Midlands 5G group, who have much more of a sort of positive outlook on delivering the Speed Up Britain message, and obviously in the connectivity of 5G generally. And therefore, if we can find a way in which we can use that template that we have learned from the Black Country across the rest of the UK, and have that as almost as a directive from the government to use as a platform, then absolutely, the way we've seen Wolverhampton and other counties in the area, council, has worked absolutely brilliantly. And I think if that can be replicated, I think we'll hopefully then not have to spend so much time going to tribunal.
Really helpful, really helpful. Going to change notes slightly. We talked with Juliet from MBNL about the connected map that West Midlands 5G's developed. So has this allowed operators easier access to public assets, and kind of how valuable do you think that tool is, particularly perhaps finding new macro or small cell sites?
Absolutely, and especially being involved with the small cell side as well, with BTE, there's definitely the impetus there is to drive the use of council assets, because invariably that's obviously what we'll be using to roll out the network. But obviously using the way in which we can map, overlay and layers, so then we can actually see the granular layers from a macro cell right the way through to a small cell. That also helps us from a RAM perspective to space plan the capacity, but also what that would look like from a macro cell overseeing layer into the actual small cell layers. And therefore the conversation to the councils will be a lot simpler, because you have a pin that marks the location. And if I could have this sort of 10 years ago with that sort of offering, that would certainly help us with our NTQs, where we are obviously being asked to vacate a certain site, and having the opportunity to look at alternative locations to house the equipment on a map that's interactive, is again a huge help to us from the initial stages of rollout. So yes, very much the connected map is very much something we'd again like to see replicated across the UK. Brilliant.
Chris, I only have to say thank you very much for your input. It's been really, really valuable. Appreciate your time, and thank you for joining us today.
That's an absolute pleasure, Leslie. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.